Hello, welcome back to part 3. In this section I'm going to show you how to make the raised panel door, and for that I'm going to use a profile scribing set and also a large panel raising cutter, both using the router, but you must mount your router underneath a table. You cannot do it with a router handheld. I've machined up all the timber I need for the job, but when you set up these profile scribing cutters, it's very much a matter of trial and error to get the joint correct. So machine yourself up a little bit of spare material of exactly the same size to make your trial cuts with. So we're all ready to go. Let's get started. The cutter set I'm using is of the easy set type, which means you cut both scribe and the profile with the same cutter without having to swap them around. You just raise and lower it in the table. For safety, you will also need a work holder of some sort. You can either buy one or make one yourself, and this is necessary to hold the short cross rails for the scribing operation. So that's the cutter set up. I've got a piece of scrap section in the work holder. We'll make a cut and see what it looks like. So look, and that's exactly the effect we wanted to achieve. You can see the joint nicely balanced with equal sizes on the quirk and the rebate. When you're cutting the scribe, the face side of the piece should be facing up. Then you just have to lower the cutter to use the top section of it to cut the profile joint along the length of all the pieces, and this is where the trial and error comes in. You'll probably need to make several trial cuts to fine-tune the fit, but let's have a go at this for a starter. For these cuts, the face side is down on the table. So here we go with our bit of scrap section. So after a bit of minor adjustment, here's the finished joint, perfectly flush. So now we can machine the profile on all 4 edges of the door. So face side down, the first cuts are on the rails, and then exactly the same along the length of stiles. And hopefully it will all fit together and be the right overall dimension. There's those lovely neat scribe joints. As you can see, the cutter also produces the groove for the raised panel, so that's the next job, cutting that to size and moulding it again on the router table. So this is the panel we glued up earlier. Pretty good join that, I think. You can hardly see where it is. So I just now cut this to size to fit within the grooves of the door frame. And then it's back to the router table. Okay, I've got the big cutter set up in the router table. This is for raising the panel. A couple of things to note with these big cutters. The first one, always reduce the speed on your router. I'm taking this down to 12,000 RPM, which is the maximum recommended for a cutter of this size. The second important thing is, because it's taking such a big cut, we need to do it in a couple of shallower passes. Probably do this in 2, sometimes with really heavy profiles you might need to take 3 passes to get the final shape. Everything's set up, we've moved the fences clear, we've got our hole down ready. Let's get going. To minimize any breakout, always make the cuts across the end grain first and then do the lengthways ones. So that's the initial cut, first pass. You can see there's still quite a way to go, so I'll just raise the cutter up a little bit now and make the second pass. Might actually need 3 on this, there's a lot of material to take away. When you think you're somewhere near, just check it for fit in the rails. That's actually just a little bit too tight. We need it slightly slacker than that, so just raise the cutter up, take one more final pass, and that should be perfect. So we'll just try again. A bit of rail section here. Yes, there we are. That's a much better fit. It slides. It's tight, but it slides, if you know what I mean. That is absolutely perfect. It'll allow the panel to move slightly with changing conditions. There's the final panel. The rails and stiles fitting all around it. It's a little bit tricky getting it all together. There we go. That's going to look rather nice, I think. So I'll just take it apart again, glue up all these joints, pull it together with a couple of cramps, and we'll just set that aside to dry for a bit. It is important when you're gluing up, you only glue the rails and stiles together. Don't glue the panel in place. It needs to have freedom to move. If you do glue in place, it'll either crack or the whole door will bow. So leave the panel unglued. That's the first joint. Just tap it gently. And hopefully that should be somewhere near square. Just want to go round a fraction from here. Yep, it's okay. So now just a couple of cramps on there, pull it up tight, and the door's done. Meanwhile, I can get on with finishing off the sides. Remember, we left these gluing up. Should be set now. What I need to do is put some holes in for an adjustable shelf, which is going to be in the middle of the cupboard section. I want to put a row of 3 or 4 holes here, and then also the dowel holes for the various cross rails, and then we can start trying to put it all together. To drill the shelf adjuster holes, I'm using the router on the OFA adapter plate, which fits on the FSN rails. But there's also a slightly different FSN rail available, the FSN RA, which has a series of holes drilled along its length at 32mm centres. There's a little spring-loaded plunger here on the OFA base. As you move along, that drops into position, so you can index a series of holes at 32mm spacing. That'll be ideal for our shelf adjusting holes. We'll just put 4 holes in. There you can see, perfect, evenly spaced holes. And the dowel holes are put in with the jig in exactly the same way as before. Okay, this is just the last of the cross rails being doweled into position. That seems to fit all right. All the shelves are in place, the base is done. We're ready to assemble it all. But I think before we go any further, I'm going to take it all apart again and give it a good clean up. Sand off all these pencil marks. It's going to be much easier to do it with it all flat rather than when it's all assembled. Just be very careful when you're sanding the veneered surfaces. The veneer on these is only very thin, 0.6mm. It's very easy to go right the way through it or round it over on the edges. This is where an orbital sander, which is designed for fine finishing, is much better than anything else. Now the fun really starts. And the big problem with a job like this, where there's so many different components, is quite often, by the time you get around to gluing up the last joint, the first one's already started to go off. So I'm going to do it in stages. I think, provided I check each joint is square as I go along, there should be no problem then fitting the other side on later when it's all dry, and I'm not going to be struggling with it all falling apart and glue joints can be undone. I've been there before. Let's see what happens. So that's one side all glued up, hopefully nice and square, so we should be able to fit the other side with relative ease. So this is still going to be a bit tricky, certainly a lot easier than trying to do it all in one go. All I want to do is just get a couple of cramps on either end, and then I want to stand it upright if I can. Get it on a nice level floor to make sure it's square to start with, and get the other cramps on. This is always an exciting stage, I think, when it all starts to come together and you find out whether everything fits or not. So far we're looking pretty good. You needn't put a huge amount of pressure on with these cramps, just enough to hold the joints together. The biscuits and dowels should do the majority of the holding work. There we are, that's the last one. It's pulled up nicely. Needn't apply tremendous pressure with these cramps, just enough to hold it together. So all I'm going to do now is finish the top, prepare the lippings for the exposed edge on the front, hang the door, and the job's done. The top is just another piece of the veneered block board, and then I've cut some wider lippings to go all the way around it, and then cut biscuit slots in those. It'll all fit together like that. So I just need to glue and cramp that now. Then I'm going to machine a big chamfer all the way around on the underside of the top. That's why I put such a wide lipping on here. So there's the top all glued up. Then just glue and biscuit this into position. And just put the lippings on all the exposed edges. This is a thicker one on the bottom. We'll use thinner ones on the upper shelves. Just use a cramp to hold them in place. Same again for the upper shelves. These ones are a little bit thinner. Hold that while it sets. One more to do. And then it's just a matter of a few finishing touches. I've hung the door. I'll put a knob on it. I'll put a stop, also acts as a catch. And I've put the loose shelf inside, which is adjustable on the holes we drilled. So there we are. I've built it with Bosch. I'm Holtham. Till next time. Bye bye for now.